I wanted to play a who is the player. And so I'll give a couple of hints and see if you guys can figure it out. The rules are there are no rules. The points are made up. They're not worth anything except maybe pride. I'm going to try to be as hard as I can with the hints and only get more obvious if the guesses aren't there. Are you two ready to play?
Cool. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
So no formatting, anything. There's no buzzards or anything. So I guess just chime in if you think you know who it is. All right. The first one, and this is just trust me, they'll get easier. They'll get more obvious. But the first one is their favorite player is Messi. Any guesses?
Max Kluwer.
Okay. Should we go to next clue, or Scott, do you want to take a crack at it?
I know Jordan Davis always says, does he say Ronaldo? I don't know. I was going to say Jordan Davis.
All right. So next clue, their dream car is a G-Wagon or a Lamborghini.
I know what a Lamborghini is. I don't know what a G-Wagon is.
An expensive wagon.
All right.
Elliot Lee.
Okay. So we're on to next clue. Okay. So
nice one.
and you guys are ticking off. You know, there's been some players eliminated so far because there's been no correct guesses. The third one is they used to work recycling as their main job while they were playing for Wildstone.
Yeah, I think I know now.
Yeah.
It was one of his many jobs, wasn't it?
Okay.
It's either Mendy or Mendy.
Exactly correct. It is the man with two last names, Mindy. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I was afraid that was going to get too easy too quick, so I had to throw you guys off at the beginning. But yeah, he definitely favorite player Messi. Also, G-Wagon or Lamborghini are his dream cars. Could have got to the point. I guess I could have switched and asked the third question of which team would his dream team to play for.
Guess it's Barcelona if
it is.
Messi
It is.
Playing.
Yeah, Barcelona. Yeah, there you go. Or Barcelona. Yeah. But yeah, good job. 3 questions. We have now set a record for naming the player, which is getting it by round 3. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Teach Me How to Wrexham. I said it correctly this time. Yes. So everybody that gave me stuff for last time. Yeah. So we have Scott and Bill with us today. It was a bold move by Bill, changing his appearance to make sure that he looks more like Scott and less like me. To avoid confusion, I understand where you were going. Little did we know you were going to have Scott the Ringer, and you both were going to have the same glasses and hairstyle and beard today. So good job.
Hairstyle, not a choice.
Not really for me as well. I've jumped before and pushed, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm let's not point it all out. Yeah, well, thank you two jumping on. This is the Colchester episode. For people that are joining for the first time, what we do is take a look at the team that we are getting ready to face. We give some background history about the club, the town, the culture, little facts that we may have picked up here and there. People that have been Wrexham fans for years are the experts. They teach me on the Wrexham perspective, how Wrexham views the town, the team, if there's any player connections. And we have 2 of those wonderful Wrexham people today. We have Scott and Bill. Bill, you would have seen on here obviously before, and you would have seen Scott on here before. Big Wrexham fans and matching haircuts. Fellas, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, Ron. Doing fine, bit busy with the end of school run at the moment. So just recovering from that. I think they've settled. But all good.
Oh yeah. And Bill, how you?
Yeah, not too bad. Scott, no offense, but I didn't realize how cold it was going to be when I shaved my head, just going out, especially with the weather at the moment. Like it's just, I've done it. Last time I did it was during the lockdown, and it was decidedly warmer when I did it then. So lesson learned. I'll try and keep the hair as long as I can.
Yeah.
Well, thank you boys for joining in today. Are we ready to crack into some Colchester?
We are indeed.
Yeah.
Well,
Bill, let me pose it to you. Who is Colchester?
Do you know what? Other than being from the southeast, I don't really know a lot about Colchester. Since I've been going regularly, we've not played them a lot. I think the last time we played them was in 2005. I just had a look. That was the season. That was the season before I started going really regularly. I used to just go every now and again before that. My auntie and my mum and my brother all used to go more regularly than I did until after the LDV Vans final. So they're not really a club I've got a lot of experience with, other than they play in blue and white stripes, and they've got Chester in the name. So clearly they're not good people.
Yeah, cue the booze. Yeah. How about you, Scott? Who is Colchester?
Same as Bill, really. It's we haven't played them that much. I did look at the head-to-heads, but the head-to-heads had us playing just 2 seasons in the same division, which wasn't true. Because I remember they played in the same division as us when it was Division 4, which is League 2 now, and we beat them twice, and they got relegated. And the thing with that was that the very next season, which was 1990 to 91, that was a season where we came bottom of the league, but were re-elected, if you like. So we knew there was no relegations to the non-league then. So then Brian Flynn, our manager at the time, played all the youth players, gave them a year's or a season's experience. And obviously the season following us coming last was the season we played Arsenal and saw a good run. And then Colchester came back up into the league, and then we played them as recorded in the head-to-heads on that website. So it's a bit of a strange one, because there was another bit of an interesting fact from that first match. Played them away, and Andy Marriott made his debut, but not for Wrexham, played for Colchester. Now, Andy Marriott, you may be aware on social media, there's a certain caster who loves him, fearless and devotion, and wears that horrendous goalkeeping top, the multicoloured thing.
Okay.
And that was the one that Andy Marriott wore that kind of made him sort of famous. But he's a brilliant goalkeeper, but his first ever professional match was against us.
Ooh.
So that's kind of all I know about Colchester, apart from its similar sort of football clubs, similar sort of size, capacity-wise, about 10,000. The city itself is bigger than Wrexham, probably twice the size. She's saying that we're 70,000, 130,000, and it's the first city, and the Romans claimed it the capital of Britain, as they called it. So it wasn't London, it was Colchester. And up until our only link with, apart from Andy Marriott, I suppose, is Bodicea went down there and kicked their ass in 61 AD. Sort of took a bit of a revenge mission. And Bodicea were from Anglesey. That's kind of all I found out about him. Apart from I always look up famous people from that. So they do have a few famous people.
Speaking of historic matches, let me throw one in there that I saw. Are you guys familiar with 1903 match against the Irish Fusiliers?
No.
No, not at all. Well, it's a good one. So first off, the Irish Fusiliers were named after the fusil, using the light musket, and coming from the Latin word fusel that we get fuse from. So to light them. So they were the company that were really good. They had a football team that was located in Colchester. They were positioned there. And it was actually an Irish regiment that the British Army conscripted. And they were led by the Prince of Wales at the time. So a little bit of a Welsh history formed through there. But so it wasn't an official football team, played Colchester in 1903. The match ended in a skirmish, and the Fusiliers removed all of their belts and beat the Colchester players with them. So skirmishes and Colchester, they've got some history going with them.
I mean, it takes some guts to take your belt off to hit someone, doesn't it? Because there's a chance that while you're chasing them, your trousers are going to fall down. So
yeah. I guess it was worth it, beating people with your belt. So that was a beautiful history. But back at that point in time, they were the Colchester Town and not Colchester United. A little bit different. Originally were Colchester Town, I believe 1873. And then supporters wanted to have them go professional in the 1930s. And the club didn't want anything to do with it. They wanted to stay as the Colchester Town and how they were running it. So a new club started, Colchester United, playing on the same ground, and eventually became the more popular team. The amateur side went away, that was Colchester Town. So that's why you will see that Colchester started in 1937, but they used the same exact badge as the amateur side did. So it kind of took over, but at one point in time in history, both the clubs existed. We obviously will get to the good old crest and badge. But if we didn't play them that much, we don't really have any rivalry with them with the limited history.
No, generally you're only going to have a rivalry with a team that's fairly close by, or maybe someone you got like a title chase on. But I don't think we've done either of those, have we, Scott? Really? So well, they're obviously not close by, but we've never really had an ongoing battle with them in terms of a title chase or anything. So they're one of the few clubs that you seem to just have like a passing thing with rather than a long-term history of playing them.
Yeah,
I mean, we've only played them in 3 seasons in the same division, and I only looked back to 1990. So, and I don't think we played them much prior to that either. So that's just 6 games. We haven't even played them in the cup, which is unusual. So there's nothing really. There is no rivalry.
Yeah. So close to as least amount of history as maybe any club that we've come against so far this season. This is the least amount of history or interactions. Have we not played them since the 1990s? Have we played them more recently than that?
I think Bill said, was it 2004 or something?
Yeah, the 04-05 season was the last time we played them, but not a lot before that.
No.
That was in League One. So
then you have to go back to 1990 for the other time we played them.
It's an absolutely riveting history with them. What a fantastic episode this is.
Yeah. Again, and we're wrapped up. So that's everything you need to know about Colchester and Wrexham.
There is a little bit of history with Phil Parkinson, though, who his first proper managerial position was as Colchester United manager.
Oh, okay.
So he managed Colchester for 3 years and actually got them promoted, if I remember rightly. He didn't play for them. He just, managed Parkinson. They finished second and got promoted to the Championship from League One. So that was like his first real job in management, and he's sort of gone on from there and had a successful career, really.
Yeah, so he must have went from there to Hull City then.
That was it, and then to Charlton, Bradford, which was obviously his big managerial role. Then Bolton, Sunderland, and then us.
He gets around, but he's ours now. Keep your hands off of him. Eyes are up here, people. Parkinson's ours. Yeah, so limited history, no rivalry, a little bit of overlap with the manager, but from that time to now, I don't know, would many fans really still have a place for Phil Parkinson's, where when we went to Bradford City, they welcomed him. I think they clapped for him or something, gave him some respect. So this, maybe he didn't. I don't know. Do you think they're going to be still proud and fans of his?
I think football fans in general always have a soft spot for a manager that's taken them up. Yeah. So I think that they would be. I'm not sure what the circumstances were when he left, whether he just left to go to Hull were quite big, weren't they? I think. I'm not sure. It was like a step up for him, maybe. Yeah. So you tend to not begrudge that.
It's a weird one. Just reading Wikipedia. So this is the Wikipedia version. I have absolutely no clue from actual knowledge, but says here that he resigned from Colchester in early June, then signed for Hull in late June, and Hull had to agree compensation with Colchester, even though he'd resigned, because it was so quick after he'd left the job. So whether Colchester fans would appreciate that or not, I don't know. Like you say, Scott, sometimes like a lot of people, it might be one of those situations where there's half the fans were just happy to have him get them promoted, and the other half are sort of bitter about the way it all happened, because that can happen sometimes. Like quite a famous-ish recent case was Jack Grealish and Calvin Phillips both going from Villa and Leeds respectively to Man City. The players granted, but I remember both fan bases were very split. Some were like, oh, it's good that they're going on to probably win the title, and the other half were like, oh no, stuff them, they should have stayed with us. So football fans are fickle, aren't they, Scott?
Definitely. But if the shoe's on the other foot, I suppose, I'm not going to use Wrexham as an example, don't tempt fate, but imagine if Luke Williams left Notts County after getting promoted to go to a League One side or Championship side.
He was linked with Oxford for a bit, wasn't he? So
he was, yeah. I don't think they'd be happy.
No.
Yeah, especially this season. If he left them in the first season up into League Two and then goes to greener pastures, and if the team falls from graces out of a playoff spot, that would probably leave a bad taste in a fan's mouth, I would think. Yeah,
because a lot of managers these days talk about projects. As back in the day, probably when Phil Parkinson was at Colchester, managers just went somewhere to manage them. There's never a 10-year plan. So it may have seemed a bit different for him to resign in his own head, if you like. But obviously not Stockport, us. We keep on calling them projects. I hate the word. It's just it's a football kind of season. But
it's just numbers and data at that point. It's like, all right, well, we must move X amount of positions. And
But saying that, Brian Flynn famously stayed with us for years and years. You could argue he definitely had a project which revolved around youth players and our youth system, which worked really well for him. And he took it on to Swansea, did well for Swansea. And then he got involved with the Wales setup. You had Gareth Bale and Aaron Ramsey. So I suppose back in the day, he was a bit more project orientated. But I think he insisted on it to become a manager because Swansea had a very similar sort of ethos. They wanted to play a certain type of football, and the type of football they wanted to play would require a youth side and a slow, which would take a couple of seasons or so. So whether Phil had that project, if I was a Colchester fan and knew that Phil Bankson had a project in mind and then just said,
well, he might have had his own personal career project where he's like, okay, I'm going to work really hard. You get promotion, and then I'm going to use that to, parlay or a stepping stone to get another position at another place and more pay. And if a team is willing, like Hull City is willing to pay a fee to get him, you would imagine they were paying him more than what he got at the previous place. You would think, but I didn't realize that the term project or viewing something as here's what we're going to do as our 5-year plan or 10-year plan, that's a fairly recent development within football.
I think like managers just back then, like you sort of alluding to, Scott, like managers would just take a job and they'd just be the manager, wouldn't they? It wouldn't really be so much forward thinking. You'd have your squad, which would usually be your 11 plus. They only used to, was it 3 on the bench for around maybe around the mid 2000s? It might have been 5 on the bench, but you'd only have 3 subs, wouldn't you? And it was just like you had your 15, maybe 16 core squad, and the rest would be kids generally. So you'd have a bit more scope to play kids back then, and you wouldn't have to have a project where it was, well, like you say, apart from Brian Flynn, generally you wouldn't have a project. You'd just have, this is my squad. We might bring a few kids through. That's it. Whereas now it is like managers are sort of brought in with a vision, aren't they? Like taking Notts County, for example. I can't remember who was the manager before Luke Williams, but they played a very similar style of football. They got Luke Williams, and then when Luke Williams was linked with Oxford, there was talk of them getting another manager that was very similar, who's the Gateshead manager. So like some clubs have that kind of like, it doesn't actually really matter who the manager is anymore because they have a vision that they then go and employ a head coach rather than a manager to come in and deliver what the club's vision is. And they're just running the sort of day-to-day coaching and all that sort of stuff. Whereas back then, like sort of Scott said, they were the manager. There was no directors of football. There was the board, but they just said, here's your money, you do whatever. And the manager would literally be doing all the day-to-day. They'd probably be sorting out the catering. They'd be sorting out all the physio and everything. It would just be the manager was actually a manager, weren't they, Scott?
Yeah, definitely. Because what was it? The 1990s when we had Flynn. And I think I can name 3 managers that had, were managing for a long time. And it was Brian Flynn, Dario Gradi from Crewe, and Alex Ferguson. I think Wenger sort of came in, it was unheard of. You'd have a manager for more than 4 years, was unheard of. And we had managers. Our manager then was like 10 plus years with us. And Alex Ferguson was actually a century. So, otherwise, it's a bit.
And they were primarily more administrative than the like coaching and the style of football that you're going to play, or it was a mix of those. And
I don't think they'd necessarily be doing admin tasks, but they just had a bit more say in, what time maybe training was delivered, who the players that you were going to sign were. Like now, maybe at our level, Phil Parkinson does have a lot of say in who he signs, but some clubs, especially at the top level, will have a transfer committee, and the head coach or the manager or whatever you call them is only part of a group of people that have a say in it. Whereas even the top clubs in the 90s and 2000s, the manager decided who was coming in. And like Scott says, there would be a quick turnaround because if it didn't work, they'd soon be gone, and then it would be someone else that's brought in. And a lot of clubs have had mixed fortunes because they'd go a season playing 3-5-2 defensive long ball football. They'd get rid of their manager and someone would come in who wanted to play 4-4-2 attractive, passing the ball, and they didn't have the players to do that. And then they might get sacked because they're trying to do something that doesn't fit what the squad already had. Whereas I think clubs are a little bit more aware now. If Phil Parkinson goes for whatever reason, we'll probably bring someone in that has a style of play that's at least similar, if not exactly the same. And, Luke Williams was brought in as somebody who played that style of football. And there's sort of like a hint that Notts County, when he does eventually go, will bring in someone very similar to that to deliver a project rather than a specific football inside.
Is that the similarity?
I'd say it's quite interesting, really, because obviously Luke Williams is a really good manager, but I don't think it'd work at Wrexham.
No, you're right.
And I think Phil Parkinson probably would do all right at Notts County, though, because I think he's a bit more, almost a safer option with the way he starts a team. Certainly the way he did with Wrexham. He was a slow burner, wasn't he? Lots of people couldn't figure him out. But he was doing the old cliched, sort the defence out, and then work from there. I think that's why he had a bit of a slow start first season. How did
Phil Parkinson compare style-wise then to Dean Keats? Was that a similarity where the transition was a like for like, or
they play a same formation as Dean Keats was at the back end of his reign, but I think the style of football was a lot less attractive under Dean Keats, wasn't it, Scott?
I think so. The problem with Dean Keats, he kind of got chucked in on each occasion when we were really dire, and he did sort of turn them around. So I will defend him on that, but then when you got 3 quarters into the season, it was still a little bit boring because they weren't scoring goals. And is that Dean Keats' fault, or was that because we couldn't really afford the likes of Paul, the Langstaff or anyone? Well, I'll say Langstaff was quite cheap, wasn't it? But I think there was similarity way. But then Phil Parkinson started slow because he got rid of a lot of players, or the club did, whether it was Phil Parkinson or Les Reed or the guys on the, above. Les Reed, I can't remember his title is, but he's kind of recruitment. So they dropped a lot of players, Rutherford famously, that horrible episode in the document. Who else went? I forgot his name. The defender, very loud. Bill, you might be able to help me. He was the captain. Went to Grimsby. That's it, yeah. Of course, he left as well. So they, perhaps not with Paul Rutherford, but Pearson going was quite a bold statement, really, to let that happen, because he was our main man, especially through the COVID years. Even when he was injured in the stand, you could hear him on the comms. Yeah, above everyone else.
Che says the few matches that him and Mark did in the COVID season that Sean Pearson and Jay Harris, you could just hear, when they weren't playing, you could just hear them proper barking for the entire game at the players on the pitch, that they almost like 2 extra managers in the stands, and just pair of them just wouldn't shut up for the entire game, which is quite funny.
Yeah, well, he used to go on the other side of the pitch, didn't he, Pearson?
Yeah,
so on the Bold Road side, so they'd be getting it from both sides.
That'd be good to hear some of that old audio or something from there, and hearing Mark and Che, and then these voices just belting out during those COVID times, if they exist. The recordings.
I know what Mark's like. He's probably got an archive of it all somewhere. It's the audio files of all those games. I should have a chat with him, see if he's still got them, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
He'll have him on a spreadsheet.
Censor it. I think he's constantly apologising for the bad language that you may have heard. It wasn't me, it was Sean.
Well, that's cool that we have the link to Colchester from Phil Parkinson. Thanks for giving some background on the managers, and the thought that you can have somebody that has a specific idea and plan for a program or a project, and just like players, you're seeing who fits into that bill. And managers are not above or below that they can be good fits or poor fits for the system as well. If we can look at Colchester before we go into looking at this match, I wanted to throw out a couple of the tidbits of value that I add for 1.5 minutes to the episode, and the etymology of the name Colchester. Now, there's Scott, you had already mentioned that this was the capital, the head of the Roman army was located in Colchester, so there's Roman and Latin influence in the name. Has anybody heard anything about the name Colchester or where that comes from before I jump into it?
I know that the link between the word Chester is not a coincidence, because Chester was like the northern capital, wasn't it, Scott, of the Roman Empire. It wasn't necessarily a capital, but it was a big base for them, wasn't it? And Chester's a Roman walled city. So other than that there is that Latin link there, I don't know.
Yeah, you're pretty spot on. So Scott, did you have anything?
Not not really. I know they got theatres there. They got Roman theatres there, which I think there's only 5 in Britain, and they've got 2 of those 5. So obviously it was quite a big place back in the day. And one of them is still there as ruins, maybe, but it held something like 5,000 people. Wow. So it's pretty sizable. I don't know if they killed Christians with lions, Colchester. I'm not really sure what they did.
Yeah, they would have had a couple of good vomitoriums, the edges of those old amphitheaters where you would exit out. They would have those chambers on the side for everybody that was drinking. You wouldn't leave completely out of like the Colosseum or the thumbs up again. I got to watch my hand movements. I always got to take that note. Be careful what gestures you do because it will highlight it. But they used to not exit completely out and like to go throw up. They would throw up and vomit in those hallways exiting. And so they were called vomitoriums, and, meaning to expel, to project out. And so that's where we get vomiting from now. But you guys are exactly right. Chester comes from the Latin castor, which means fortress or fortified. So yeah, there being a walled city and a fortress, a fortified town, or in Chester as well as Colchester. Exactly. That is exactly it. And then the Cole in the beginning is where there's a little bit of debate. There's some people who kind of mystify it and say King Cole is where it was named after. But the historians point to more of the Latin root of Cole being short for Coln, which is like a Germanic or the non-Latin version of colonia, of a colony. And so there's still a river there, the Colne, and there's also in Germany, there's Coln, which is Cologne. And that was also a Roman colony that still preserved its name. So you have those 2 Roman names put together as being shortened now to where we refer to it as not Colchester, but Colchester or Colchester. Comulodinum is the Roman name for the town before it eventually got to what we have it today as Colchester. So like many of the towns and many of the cities that we've come across, there's a version. Sometimes they blend with Celtic or Germanic or Norse names. And then those also change over time into either pronunciation or even spelling, becoming their own words. But yeah,
that sounded like it should have oscopy at the end of it. What was it?
Yeah. There. Well, to tee up, because you guys nailed that. To tee up to the badge, if you guys have it in mind or want to pull it up or whatever, if you guys want to take a crack at the pretty simple badge, but if you want to take a crack at it.
Well, so is that a Roman centurion eagle symbol that's in the middle
we're done.
it?
Yeah,
so
we're absolutely done.
Blue and white stripes, and then
yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, it's that Roman eagle in the middle, and then the actual the stripes are Roman as well. And there was the town crest was actually created by the Romans, and those stripes were a Roman design. They were black and white, and then the team colors became in blue and white at some point in time. So
It's funny, I don't know about Scott, but growing up, primary school history lessons, when we're so close to an old Roman, fortified city, a lot of my primary school history was based on Roman history and stuff, purely because we could have a trip to Chester if the teachers decided that was a good idea. So I think us more than a lot of other towns in the UK, us and some, and the Roman towns and cities themselves, we get that history sort of, I don't know why, it's just embedded in my head, really. So sorry, Ram, but none of that's come as a surprise for once. Usually you get me, but that would, most of what you've said today is like, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
So they've even got the same strip as Chester.
Yeah.
The old Tesco economy blue stripe.
Yeah, and so possibly Chester's is from their Roman influence as well.
Yeah,
very well could be. I didn't realize that this was going to be such a walk in the park. I thought there was such cool things. It's like, this is so cool. You're like, yeah, you're repeating what my grade 5 told me. So yeah, go.
Well, biology, we went to the zoo in Chester. History, we went to the amphitheatre in Chester.
Mm-hmm.
Now I live in Birkenhead, which is kind of the other way past Chester. My two girls now go to Chester to study Romans.
Okay. Full circle.
Yeah.
It's quite funny that, because when we were younger, kind of like our history lessons were as much about English history as anything, but there's a big push now for more Welsh-based history in Welsh schools. So as much as they probably still would do a trip to Chester, you're more likely to hear about more Welsh folklore and stuff that happened in Wales and you just stuff that happened in England. But granted, in fairness, a trip to Chester, as long as you're not going past the Diva Stadium, is always pretty decent.
You have to be careful. Yeah. You had to put a qualifier, the little asterisk next to it, like a trip to Chester. Wait, hold on. As long as.
Look. In fairness, most people in Chester are queuing up outside the Liverpool shop anyway, aren't they? Rather than the Liverpool FC shop. Have you seen that clip that's been doing the rounds on Twitter recently of I think it's like from the Guardian or some other newspaper where they're interviewing people in Chester about the big Chester game, and no one even knows it's on. It's
what game?
It's brilliant. Yeah, what game? Everton.
Yeah. To find a way to dunk on Chester.
Me and Che were talking about it the other day, like how awful it must be to be a Chester fan at the moment. Like it must just be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad enough at the best of times for them, but now when they're languishing in the National League North and we're flying higher than every newspaper, every news channel, any sort of clickbait article ever. Oh, it must be terrible.
Yeah, it's like when you went to like high school or for you like college with somebody, and you had a crush that you had, and then you see the Facebook posts or the social media now, and they're with the guy that you hated, and they're living a life of taking pictures in like Mallorca and south of Spain and.
Imagine, yeah, bad enough being a Chester fan in this situation, but imagine if you were a huge Deadpool fan and you were from, you're a Chester fan and you were heading to Deadpool, or you loved Always Sunny, like you wouldn't be able to watch it again, would you?
Yeah. You're welcome, Chester. Anytime. Well, boys, looking at this upcoming week, this upcoming match, Scott, if you want to jump in first, how do you feel about us facing Colchester?
Well, they're not doing very well, are they? They third from bottom, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I did look at their wins and draws and stuff. I think they've won 6, drawn 2, and lost 13, which is pretty bad. I didn't break that down into home and away, so I don't know what their away form is compared to their home form. But I would suggest they're equally as bad as it. But it's a bit weird because they got a manager, and I can't remember when we played SToK in the FA Cup. The most recent one when we took 4,000 odd there, it was a few years back. But Matthew Aronson used to play for SToK, and he's now their manager, and he's quite young. So I don't know when he started with, but sadly, he doesn't seem to be doing very well. But he went from Peterborough to Crawley, and he's now, as a manager, Peterborough to Crawley to Colchester now. But I can't see us losing, not at home. So I'm pretty confident we're going to win, to be honest.
And Bill, would you, if we took a loss at Colchester, what kind of devastation would that rain on us?
I mean, we're only in December, so any loss isn't the end of the world. I'm not very reactionary. I think it would be best to avoid Twitter for 4 or 5 days if we did lose. Definitely avoid red passion. I mean, you should probably avoid red passion anyway, but definitely avoid red passion if we lost. People will lose their heads, but we're gonna win and lose games that we don't expect to win and lose this year. The Harrogate result wasn't great, but then we beat Morecambe 6-0, and as much as we probably should be beating Morecambe, to beat them 6-0 was unexpected. So it's kind of one of those. I think what we do really well as a team is we beat teams that aren't doing very well, but quite often they'll have a good game against us. So their team, like Sutton, was 2-1. It was quite close, and a lot of their fans came away, but Wrexham are bang average. But how many times did we hear Wrexham were bang average last year and we ended up getting 111 points? If you play bang average against every team in the league but still beat them, then who cares? So I wouldn't be surprised to see us struggle a little bit on Saturday, but still get the result, and then cue the meltdown about how we only beat a team in 20 seconds 1-0 and everyone loses their heads. But that's just what Parkinson's teams do. They just grind out results. So as long as we win, I don't really care. But even if we lose, we've got enough in the locker to keep the season going, I think.
Yeah, and is there any word or anything you've heard from any of the guys that are injured that we might be getting back?
No, nothing. Usually when Parky does his pre-match press conference or whatever you'd call it, the media interviews he does with journalists, he tends to give an update, but he's quite good at keeping his cards close to his chest, Scott, isn't he? Like quite often last year, he'd be asked an update about, let's say, Aaron Hayden, and he'd say, oh, he might be a while off yet, and then he'd be on the bench or even in the starting lineup. So who knows, really? I think the fact that the game was called off on Saturday is frustrating, but I think it probably benefit the squad. Bit of rest, take us into a hard part of the season.
Well, and they could have been 2 back-to-back easy wins. You have 23rd place Forest Green and then 22nd place Colchester. And that could have been, 2 games where you get to relax a little bit more, try to work on some of the plays, some of the development with Evans in the middle and running and heading that offense now. And there could have been some opportunities, but we did miss that Forest Green game. Now we're looking at the Colchester game, which on paper seems like this should be a win. They have conceded 42 goals, so we should be able to score on them. That should be something. And they've only scored 29. We may be able to get another clean sheet. Is there any parts of our lineup that either of you have any concern at the moment?
I don't personally. I think because of the depth of everything, Max Cleworth hasn't really played a lot at all. But when he does come in, he looks okay, doesn't he? So I don't think we've got anything to worry about with regards certainly the defence. I think we got enough cover. And I haven't heard anything about, the likes of Elliot Lee and etc. being injured. It's been really quiet, actually. But maybe it's because obviously the Forest Green didn't happen, so Parkinson's interviews were probably all should have been called off. But it's been really, really quiet. I normally you hear a lot of stuff. There's the gossip, Aaron Hayden, etc. But that's Twitter. Pay much attention to all of that. So I think going forward, it's full strength, isn't it? With the exception of Fletcher, and Dalby's proving to be pretty good. So, I think he's turning people around as he did last season. To be fair, he did a similar thing. So it's a bit of a weird match. It is a weird match to sort, but it's one I don't necessarily sort of worry about this one. I worry more about the Newport one afterwards, truth be known. Just because I don't like Newport.
It's a weird one, Newport. I know you're bound to do an episode next week on it, Ram, but it's like it's a game that shouldn't be a derby. Like people would assume that it's a derby because it's a Welsh game, but I don't think we ever really had a lot of rivalry in Newport until they beat us in the playoff final in 2013. So since then, it's become a bit of something, isn't it?
Okay, so Colchester, if we had a spicy level, or if you will, burgers to the face. Colchester is 0 burgers, this is the perfect one. That Forest Green would have been a vegan burger to the face. Colchester, Bill, how many burgers to the face is that?
I mean, it's maybe a crumb.
It's
like
remnants.
Tiny little break off a burger and just flick it at you. Like, what was that, Scott? Sorry.
Is it a sesame seed bap?
Yeah, just a single sesame seed off the bap, yeah.
That was handed to you. It's not even to your face. Hey, would you mind a sesame seed? I have an extra one here. You can have it. Well, it doesn't seem that spicy. I get a little bit hesitant whenever it seems a little bit too easy. And I don't know if it's because there's been teams that we should be winning against and they end up playing harder, playing stronger, and challenging us in a way that makes us, I guess, second guess the boys and the team, and then hit that panic button and start to go, what's going on here? Why was this person out of position? And what's with Parkinson and this? It always seems to be these lower ranked teams that we should just hit cruise control and breeze right through. But I wish I could not be nervous, but I'm a little nervous.
I think Parkinson's teams are pretty good at managing their energy. And if we go 2 goals up pretty quickly, they'll take their foot off the gas. But obviously the problem with that is when you're playing against a team that then want to win because they're in a rubbish position, if you give them too many opportunities, a game becomes 2-1 and it suddenly starts looking difficult for the last 10 minutes. But in reality, like usually we're in the emotion of watching it, you're worried. But, if you were to look back at some of those games, the Sutton one being prime, like actually, if you take the emotion away from it, we were in complete control of that game. And there was a lot of games like that last year as well, where we were desperate to go up. So people were worried that we were going to lose. But really, if you really look at it, there was never really any proper worry that we were going to lose. And I say that, and we're going to draw 1-0, 1-1 now, aren't we? After all that. Typical football arrogance. Karma's going to come and get me.
Well, before I ask you guys for your predictions, let's take a look at a couple of predictions that some people have sent in. I don't have them to play, but so those are some pretty bold predictions. I wouldn't have ever guessed they would have been those predictions, but yeah, pretty bold. How about you two? Are you going to be bold? And we completely didn't just edit in some unseen predictions right now that I couldn't correctly play off like we did.
You're reading the magic of it, Ran. Come on, we all know that Mia said, "Oh yeah,"
and then cut in, replace the thing. Yeah. But how about you guys? Any predictions for the score match? I know Bill, you kind of alluded to it.
Can I go with one? Because Colchester's got one of my comedy heroes. Is from Colchester, called Chris Morris. He's the boss on the IT Crowd.
Oh, okay.
So you know him for that, but he did things like Brass, like quite satirical, kind of controversial stuff. But he did a film called Four Lions. So it's about terrorist plots. Everything's happened, so that was quite a controversial film. But it was called Four Lions, so I'm going to go with 4-0 based on that.
4-0 Wrexham. Yeah. I was like, whoa, don't get too bold. Don't. How about you, Bill?
I'm going to go with 2-0 Wrexham.
Okay. And I'm going to just back up and say the exact same thing that Mia said, which is 2-1 Wrexham. 1-1 0-0 3-2 3-0. Yes, that's the exact thing that Mia said, and I said it as well right now.
It's going to be funny when she says 5-0 in the prediction, and you
and I didn't say any of them. Yeah, I tried so hard to get all the predictions, and of course, none of them are going to be the right combination. I'll have to paste them 2, 1, 3. What? Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for jumping on. Oh, Scott, do you have a Georgina? Does she have, or Sophie with a prediction?
No. I'll send you a video.
So Bill, if you caught it or not, Georgina called. What did she call? 6-1 was it? The prediction. Yeah. Oh my goodness. We both. I said I went along. I yes and it, and I was like, well, of course, yes. Now I'm changing mine from like 3-0 to 6-1, and I was like, yeah, of course it's going to be that. And then when the 6 goals went, and I was like, oh my goodness, Nostradamus over here. Just
fair play.
Going with a big 6. But yeah, I was waiting to hear what she said if we're in the double digits now, and it's 12-0. It's like, whoa, okay. Get this one. If it's 12-0, let's hope they don't take their belts off. And but on that, Scott, thanks so much for jumping on and joining us. As always, cool. Bill.
That was always fun.
And thanks for that beautiful shirt that's behind your head with the background story with the low life. Yeah. Amazing. Rocky, thank you so much. And Bill, as always, thank you. Love the hair. Nice winter cut you got.
I know. Beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. Hopefully we take this win, take the 3 points, and up the town.
Up the town.